Good afternoon, everyone. This is your host, John, of the Research Review, creating a platform to connect and inspire. I'm here with another excellent guest today, Ashley.
Hi.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your research?
Sure. So my name is Ashley McCormick. I'm a senior here at Kent State, majoring in English, and I've been working to transcribe some classified documents of Anna Freud's.
Now, what does that look like in your day-to-day routine working with these documents?
So when I first get a document, I make sure to look at the year. Most of the times this would be in the top right corner, sometimes with the location where this letter was either typewritten or written by hand, and then I will label that. And then after that, I will have a dual screen setup where I have the letter on the one side and a Google document on the other side. Mm-hmm. And then I will begin to go line by line and basically type what I see.
Awesome. This is your first experience with research, right?
Correct.
What was it like jumping into that process?
Very intimidating. I was given a Google Drive. I wasn't told how many letters, and all of a sudden I see hundreds of documents in there that I have to go through, and they aren't all necessarily by Anna Freud. We have some from some of her closest colleagues as well. So it was daunting, but I knew I had to just jump in and get started.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that, having my first experience with research as well. And you get kind of an imposter syndrome at first because you're doing research as an undergrad student, and a lot of this work can be overwhelming at first. What's been some of the coolest stuff you've learned from this research?
I'd say probably the coolest thing is just seeing how human Anna Freud is. For those of you listening, you might be familiar a bit with the last name Freud. Mm-hmm. She is the last daughter of Sigmund Freud, who came up with psychoanalysis. If you've heard anything about penis envy, that's the guy.
That's Sigmund Freud.
I know everybody's heard of it, so I'm just going to put that out there right now. But I think that's something I've always wondered from a very young age is when you're a historical figure, do you even realize the weight you carry when you walk in public, when you speak in public? And in fact, Anna Freud wasn't really fond of news reporters coming up to her and stuff like that when she visited the States. And so it's interesting just to see these documents. And while there is stuff about her work, there's also a lot of personal things in there too. A complaint about the weather.
Mm-hmm. You said that a lot of people weren't fond of her.
She wasn't really fond of news reporters trying to get any information out of her, and especially photos as well.
Yeah.
There were only a few photographs taken of her in her lifetime that she actually enjoyed looking at, and that was it. She wasn't, yeah.
You were talking about, Sigmund Freud was one of he founded psychoanalysis, right?
Yeah, he was the, I guess you could say, main founder of it, though there were also many others in his time that contributed as well. Mm-hmm. When he first started off with it, he created the Wednesday Society, where he and a few other of his colleagues would basically talk about these ideas and solidify them a bit more. And sometimes he would take his colleagues' ideas and not really, give them credit, but he would formulate that into his own work as well.
Mm-hmm. I heard he was like a little bit selfish with his theories in a way. Yeah.
Yes, he wanted recognition for sure. But I truly think psychoanalysis was a creation of its time. It was created in a time where a lot of people were now on board with the idea of sexuality. So the penis envy thing back in the day wasn't really something very surprising.
Yeah.
And he had enough people that were on board with this sort of blend between a science and a pseudoscience, because how can you measure someone's ego? You really can't.
Right.
And how do we measure helping somebody through talking with them? We can't, but we know it sort of works. So how can we measure this? How can we solidify it so that it can compete with these other sciences that are backed up by numbers? Mm-hmm. So
what's about the time period between Sigmund Freud's work and Anna Freud's work, do you think?
My guess would be around 40 years.
She
started in psychoanalysis herself while Freud was still alive.
Yeah.
She did give him a copy of one of her works for one of his later birthdays. I remember that much. And they talked about it a bit. And she was quite upfront with him when she disagreed with him. She was blunt with him.
Yeah.
She didn't really agree with the death drive.
What's the death drive theory?
Yeah. As far as I can remember, it's basically that you're motivated by death to do repetitive actions. Mm-hmm. So it was very out there for sure. And some of his theories are still out there to us today, and they don't make sense when we look at them. And the penis envy, we don't really know. You know what I mean? That seems pretty far out. But yeah, she talked about the the work with them, and she also listened to the Wednesday Society meetings at some point too when she was young. So from a young age, she sort of knew a little bit about psychoanalysis and sort of saw what her father went through a bit.
Like you said, a lot of Sigmund Freud's theories were really out there. Were a lot of Anna Freud's theories out there, or do we still use like a lot of her theories today?
I haven't seen many of her theories in the work that I've been doing with just working with the documents. However, she did come up with the defense mechanism. So if you've ever heard, hey, you're being defensive, it sort of does stem from this a little bit.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
So, yeah, so she came up with those, which are what we use to, like, shield our ego from when somebody's attacking us, whether intentionally or unintentionally. So one of those could be, like, maybe gaslighting, you know what I mean? Like, oh, no, you didn't. I didn't do that. You did that. So just sort of
trying to trick the other person into thinking that they...
Yeah, but Anna Freud did a lot of work with children, primarily with the Hampstead War Nurseries, which was created a little bit after World War II, taking in children from that time and going through them day to day and taking notes on index cards about their height, weight, things like that, but also how they were doing. And
like you said, mentioning the weather.
Yeah, perhaps some of that too, but it really gave children that were displaced by the war or that had very busy parents a place very similar to a school or a daycare where they could be with other children and socialize. And one of the things that my mentor wants to see from these documents, if possible, is how we can sort of use that experience of helping children dealing with isolation or displacement now. After COVID, of course, there are children that are still in this situation, although it wasn't caused by war, it was caused by a pandemic. So.
Right. Yeah, no, that's great that from studying stuff like that back then to after the war, you're figuring out a way that it can help people and children now. What are some of those ways from what you've like learned in your work so far?
The biggest way I think would just be to watch and listen. Back in the day, you know, they didn't think that children and adults were all that different, but of course when kids are really young, they can't communicate on the same level as adults. And there's a thing called play therapy where kids can play with toys and we can sort of see how they interact with those toys and what maybe the actions that they're doing with these toys or what they're having these toys say, and we can try to see, okay, is that a reflection of something that's going on at home or how they're feeling, but they don't know how to express that in terms of themselves yet.
Yeah.
And kids are smarter sometimes than we give them credit for. And so sometimes we just need to listen and cast aside the idea that they're younger than us and they can't have the same mental capacity, because sometimes they do and they need just as much help as adults do.
Right. And it's just that they're just still developing. I mean, yeah, kids are a lot smarter than we think they are. Yeah. And I mean, they're not able to really express it, you know, because they're still developing.
For sure. And especially children today, they have access to social media, which has definitely made an impact on mental health. They didn't have to deal with that back in like 1950. They just didn't.
Yeah.
So that's a huge thing. Having these virtual learning environments, that's an entirely new thing that could be causing some negative impacts on how they perform in society, how they communicate. They might not be developing those skills the same way because they're not in a group of children their age. They're not playing with other children, talking to other children. And of course, this can depend on family structure as well, whether they're an only child or they have siblings. And we might not see these effects until they've grown up and it's the new generation that's grown up.
Yeah, I definitely. And even grown people have had a hard time being placed back into social settings after isolation because they were so used to, you know, communicating online and they weren't surrounded by, you know, large groups of people during the pandemic.
Right. It definitely takes an impact, and once you're into that mode, it's very hard to break out of it. And at least when you're an adult, you remember, how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
These kids don't have that.
Right.
So that's what they're starting off with. They might be taking that as their normal and making core memories out of it when it was an unfortunate normal for them. They shouldn't have had to go through that, but they did.
Yeah.
And so now it's seeing how can we help them to be the best versions they can be.
Definitely. Now, what are some ways that we can help them be the best versions that they can be after going through that kind of isolation period?
I think it's getting them with kids their age and just talking, learning, experiencing being in a group. It's hard to pick up on social cues and social interactions when you haven't been doing them for the past year and a half, a decade maybe.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like like long of a time period, like overall, considering like someone's growth. But like a year makes a huge impact. Like a year in itself makes a huge impact.
Yeah, especially when kids are developing, for sure.
Now, if we were to go through some other type of like lockdown again, or any type of isolation period, or a child had some sort of medical condition where they couldn't be placed in a social environment or outdoor environment for a period of time, what are some ways that we can kind of give them that same, developmental opportunity with social interactions?
My first thought is video games. Those helped me a lot as a child as well. I was an only child growing up.
I was too.
Yeah.
Video games did help.
And seeing those social interactions and dialogue, I think prepared me a bit more for going to school every day than my parents give credit for.
Yeah.
If they need something a bit more physical, I would say toys, depending on if their parents know other parents, maybe setting up like a virtual play date would help too.
A lot of people say like video games are like a problem for a lot of the reasons why children don't want to go out and socially interact. But in a lot of games, it's pretty much simulates like the same situation. When I would play Minecraft and go on Xbox Live, we would have the headsets and the mic on. You have the same conversation and dialogue, and you can't see the other person physically, but they're controlling their avatar and you're controlling your avatar. So in a sense, it still kind of gives that like physical interaction in a way.
Right. I'm a Nintendo person myself.
Yeah.
Especially with Animal Crossing, visiting a friend's village was always fun. But yeah, especially in games like that too, where you're on a team with other people, so you need to learn how to work together to get to your goal.
Yeah. It still goes into that idea of like, using your imagination as a kid. It just makes it more visual in a way. So you're an English major, right?
Yes.
How would you categorize your research that you're doing right now?
Interdisciplinary is the first word that comes to mind, because whenever I pitch my research to anybody, the first thing they say is, "Oh, that very sad, dejected because it's such a niche thing." Sometimes they'll take a guess at my major. Psychology? No. History? No. It's English. So yes, very interdisciplinary.
Interdisciplinary research is awesome, because it helps you get so many different perspectives, and getting perspectives of different fields, it really changes, it gives you a unique mindset of how you deal with your own work and stuff. And especially when you get someone coming from a different background to work on a project in, say, like a different field, that different perspective helps, benefit that project in different ways that other people couldn't do. So how has doing interdisciplinary work helped change your perspective of what you're doing right now in terms of your studies?
It's made me appreciate books a lot more. Going through these handwritten documents, it's hard, especially when you have to get used to their handwriting. I've had to read one letter multiple times just to get the idea of what they're talking about.
Yeah. And
then it's going through, and if there's a word I don't know, let me leave a mark and come back and look at it later. There was for a while actually where I couldn't make out one letter and I kept seeing it repeated a lot, and I was like, that's weird, it has to be something, right? And then one day it just hit me, that's a T. But it did not look like a T.
What did it look like?
But it looked like a lowercase r. So I was very confused, but I was like, no, it has to be a T, because where the word kept appearing in sentences, I mean, it was an article, it wasn't just a randomly misspelled word. It was a T in a word. So it's made me appreciate textbooks a lot more, because we don't have to deal with that. We can open it, we can read it just fine. There's no problems. But one of the things that I find the most useful about transcribing these letters the way I am is that once they're out there, we can use screen readers for them. We can listen to them via audiobooks if possible.
What are screen mirrors?
So screen readers are that are visually impaired. So it will read all the text on the screen for you.
Oh, that's nice. And do you think you're going to continue doing this type of work in the future? Or like, what would you like to do, after your bachelor's degree?
I can't say this stuff for sure. I plan on going into copy editing if possible after graduation, but research isn't off the table entirely.
Yeah. What kind of copy editing would you like to do?
Right now I work in a newsroom, so in a newsroom would be a very similar environment, but I'm down to copy edit wherever I'm needed.
Which newsroom on Kent do you work for?
The Kent Stater.
The Kent Stater. I love the Kent Stater. I know a lot of writers for the Kent Stater as well. So shout out to the Kent Stater. Now, what'd you come into college studying?
I came in as a chemistry major, actually.
That's a big change.
Yeah, I get that a lot, but it actually helped me get out a lot of my STEM core that was required for my English degree anyways. So
Yeah.
it wasn't too bad of a jump, but yeah, I tell people that and they're like, whoa. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe when you hear it. But I've always had really strong writing and reading skills. So for me, it wasn't too much of an idea jump.
Yeah. Now, why'd you make that change?
I just felt dispassionate after a while.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same looking at the stuff anymore, and I just felt disheartened, and I kept comparing myself to colleagues a bit too much, and ultimately it wasn't something that I wanted to pursue. So then I looked into other things I could do, and since I already had the strong writing and reading background, I figured why not try English, and
Yeah.
here we are.
Well, I think you made a good decision because you're very knowledgeable about what you're talking about. And I went through kind of like the similar situation because I went in as a pre-medical student, which is, basically like a chemistry major. And I was comparing myself to colleagues as well. And I was working, but I was nowhere near the level that they were at.
Right.
And then I realized what, my skill set was, looking at things bigger picture rather than smaller. So like I was a public health pre-medical major. And so it kind of gave me those two perspectives. I would work in the lab with chemistry and, look at the smallest of the small, but then also look at the broader aspect of health as a whole. And I know I was top of my class and at the top of conversations when it came to public health topics and then analyzing things on a broader scope, but I was struggling to be average in the lab. So that's why I decided to make the switch and then do research more towards public health and economics because, that's more of my skill set.
Especially with this work, there is nobody to compare yourself to. I'm the only one working on this for my mentor. So I have to set all of the standards. They talk to me about the standards and ethics of this line of work, but it really is me that has to keep myself in line and up to those standards.
Yeah. Now, how long have you been working on this project for?
Since May, I believe.
Since May?
Yeah.
And you said how many notes of pages did you have to go through?
Well over 100. And there might be more on the way.
Are you all through those 100 right now?
Yes, but I'm still going to have to do more look-throughs.
Yeah.
They're never ending.
That's got to be an intimidating process.
Yes, especially when you've read the same document like 10 times. It's like, is there anything new? But sometimes your eye just needs that next look to catch it. When I got done with the first look through for all hundreds of letters, I remember I told my mentor and I was like, all right, it's done. No more could be done, right? And they were like, oh, well, I've seen some of them misspellings. And I think to myself, that's weird. I go line by line, and I even double checked after I first transcribed them all. I was like, there's no way an error is getting through my eye vision. No. But come to find out, there were a few British English spellings in there that I, seeing the original document, knew to be correct, but to an American reader, that's going to look wrong, that I didn't know how to spell a basic vocabulary word when that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
So what I had to go in and do was put a footnote after the word, correct it to the American spelling, and then put the footnote at the bottom that says, here's how the word was originally spelled in the document.
Now, how many times do you think you had to do that, going through the papers?
Maybe 20 or so.
20 or so? That's not too bad.
No, not too bad. And that would also include specifying, for example, there were times when words were stricken out by hand.
Yeah.
So that wasn't, them or anyone. That was the original writer who struck it out. Or I've had times where there's been a letter missing out of a word. So it's okay. Let's put a footnote. Let's explain it. There was one time where there were a lot of notes in the margin. So it's okay. I'll try to fit that onto the document as best as I can. And now let me explain to you that, yes, I know how to type in straight lines and make it make sense, but they wrote in the margins and on a piece of paper that's going to look normal to you. But when I put it into a Google Doc, it probably won't.
It doesn't, yeah.
Yeah, it probably won't look as nice, but that's what's on the letter. And that's what's important, is making sure that people get the most original document to view as possible.
Right. And I've come to realize that some of the most intelligent people have some of the sloppiest handwriting. I think there's actually a study that was done that's saying that unorganized people are more intelligent. I don't know if that's true or not, but I remember reading that somewhere. I don't have the source, so don't quote me on it. But I like to believe that because I'm very unorganized as well.
Yeah, that's fair. And for anyone out there listening that wants sort of a visual of what I work on a bit, Harvard does have a few of Anna Freud's documents available for public viewing online if you search it up. So you can sort of see what I work with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But they just have the original documents on there, but there's no footnotes, and it hasn't been typed out. So they do have a few of the handwritten ones where you can see her handwriting if you would like to get a better idea of what I have to look at.
Yeah. What would you just like Google?
I typed in Harvard Anna Freud the other day and they came up. I was given a direct link at first, but you would be able to find them that way for sure.
I think I'm going to look into that after the episode, and I'm not going to analyze them, but I
Please
think
don't.
Yeah, I think it's just cool to look at them because it's like it's a big piece of history, not only for research in general, but everyone.
Yeah, it's incredible. I've learned about more places in Europe and in the States than I anticipated. I've run across like slang words and words that haven't been used a while in English in these letters.
Yeah. How has doing research in general helped you just as a person, do you think?
I look at things more carefully and piece by piece, especially with a process like this. At first, there were names that I would glance over and think, oh, that's not too important, or places. But when you piece it together within that framework of somebody's life and you realize, oh, that place today might look way different than it did when she visited it, or anything like that, it really makes you stop and think how you're writing yourself and how others around you are writing today, and how we write things is obviously different. With texting, you know, we're going to use abbreviations, we're going to all that stuff, but even our text might be worth looking into in the future.
Yeah. And I think there is certain research going on in like terms of online communication right now.
Yeah, it makes me rethink and double check my texts before I send them. Because you never know, they might be looked at in 100 years. But I mean, Anna Freud didn't know her documents were going to be looked at in 100 years. And there's also books of Sigmund Freud's letters as well out there. You know, they wrote those letters to the recipients. They weren't expecting the whole world to be able to view them at any time, and here they are.
And it's crazy to think that we might be used in a study, generations from now without us even knowing.
Yeah, it's possible, for sure.
Ashley, if you had one more thing to share with the world, what would it be?
Read more. Learn more. We have a lot more resources at our disposal in this century than ever.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure back in the day, Anna Freud wanted to look up maybe a person's name or something, but to do that, she'd have to maybe write a letter to a friend that maybe knew them to get, like, the name and the address or whatnot, and we can just Google it. There's online courses for free. Yeah. There's books online for free. I read books through my library card, through an online service on my laptop. Even search up Kent, Ohio. See what you find. You're going to learn something new. It might be something very arbitrary, something that happened like a decade ago, but you've learned something new about Kent. And I'm always learning something new about Kent. You know, I didn't grow up in Kent, but through living here, obviously I've experienced Kent. Yeah. And there's resources here where I can learn about the history of Kent.
The amount of information we have at our fingertips is insane.
It's ridiculous. And I love looking at cat videos, don't get me wrong. But maybe once in a while, just take the time to maybe learn more about something that you're passionate about. Or if you hear someone talk about a random topic and it catches your ear, look it up.
Yeah.
See what it's about. You never know where it'll take you. You might read more on it. You might choose to minor in something.
You never know like where it's going to take you. Yeah, it's so important to have this a hunger to learn more and to, improve yourself. And if you stay consistent with it, and like they say, you should learn something new every day, you'll be amazed at like how much you will grow. Especially
because it breaks you out of the mold of staying in your bubble.
Right.
Especially with college classes, of course, you're going to be studying whatever your disciplinary is, but look up something new. Learn something outside of it. You never know. You might find an area where it crosses over into your discipline too.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so unexpected. Like I said, I came in, as a public health major, and then I always had an interest in, personal finances and stuff like that. Decided to look more into economics just for fun, and just, to help me personally with, managing my money. And it never came to me how, economics relates to public health. But like it really does, because every single policy also has to go through processes of considering money as well.
Yeah, and especially with these letters, it's taught me that we have these documents and we put so much weight on them, but normal people wrote them too. Who's to say there isn't some lies in there?
Mm-hmm.
Or a typo because they were rushing that day.
Yeah.
We don't know, but they do give us a glimpse into history that is very intimate. It's not a public speech that was prepared or anything. They just wrote what was on their mind, and that was it.
I know. Like we said earlier, it's crazy to think that probably generations from now, what we're writing on our minds on the phone might be taken into consideration.
Yeah, it definitely can be. And also social media posts, that's something I think about a lot too. I used to have a journal. I have not written in it in like 2 years. But stuff like that too. Even the notebooks we take notes in for classes, Yeah, I see the information, but this doodle catches my eye on the margin. What's this about? What were they doodling about? For me, it's always because I'm bored.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I usually have a doodle notebook during the podcast, and I'll do like all types. I write maybe down 3 notes, but then the rest of the page is filled with drawings and stuff. And I feel if they ever get a hold of that notebook, they're gonna have like the hardest time deciphering what I was thinking. And if they take this audio file into consideration while studying my notes, I'm letting you know right now, future researchers, that it has no meaning at all. It was just just for fun.
At least there's multiple sources, right? You have your podcast and your notes. And for other people too, we have those different facets of our life that show others how we communicate, what our priorities are. For a lot of people, it's social media, but of course how we interact with our family is a lot different than how we interact with our friends. And that's how it was for Anna Freud as, an up-and-coming psychoanalyst. Yeah, she had to move to England, and she did some of her work there, but she gave speeches here in the States and visited multiple times, and that was one facet, and she was completely different with her most close colleagues, and you can see her in another light with her published writings as well. They're all different facets of the same person, and so having another one to add and see someone in a new light is amazing. And the fact that we even have these after all these decades is amazing. Anything could have happened to them. They easily could have been burned.
Right.
Or
I know a lot of stuff did.
Yeah. But the fact that we have these, we need to take advantage of it. It might not be for everybody, but whenever the world needs it, it's going to be here. Whether it's in the digital file still, whether it gets turned into a publication, they're here.
Yeah.
And however they can get used is a win.
Right.
In my book. If you're listening to it as an audiobook and you fall asleep to it, as someone with sleep problems, I consider that a win.
Yeah.
If you need it for a presentation that you're giving on psychoanalysis and you learn something new and you decide to look into psychoanalysis more and decide to go to training for it, that's a win.
Right.
Yeah. All good ways to use information to me.
Ashley, you were doing fantastic work right now. I'm seriously so excited to see what you're going to do in the future, and I'm hyped to listen to your 3-minute thesis presentation that we both have coming up in October. I definitely want you to come on here again because I feel like we could talk forever, but just separate it into different episodes.
Yeah, it's a lot of ground to cover with Anna Freud herself. We're also trying to see the connection she has here with Cleveland and the Northeast Ohio area, as she did have a colleague that moved here and lived in Cleveland, Ohio. So we're sort of trying to see if we can establish that connection a bit more between, okay, what did she influence over here, and how did that spread out to maybe some of the practices we see in Northeast Ohio psychoanalysis work today.
Right. I didn't realize her work impacted this area so much specifically.
And I didn't either. It's not something that's talked about a lot, I think, because we tend to focus on their work and not make like not as much of a personal view on it.
Yeah.
Because she was born in Vienna, and then once World War II was on the rise, moved to London to do some of her work as well. But yeah, that's what we're hoping to find is how can we use some of her work and practices maybe today to help children that were in a similar isolation and displacement like those after or during World War II.
Yeah.
And seeing her impact on Northeast Ohio psychoanalysis today. But it's a very hard thing because psychoanalysis is still going on. It's still happening. A lot of people think it has gone to the wayside, but it is still here. It's still present. There
Definitely.
are still training psychoanalysts and practicing psychoanalysts. For anybody out there that wants to learn more about that, I would recommend On and Off the Couch.
On and Off the Couch.
Yes, it was and still is a podcast that is being produced where psychoanalysts today or people with experience in psychoanalysis are getting interviewed and talking about how they're using it, whether it is in their office for practice or if it's outside somewhere else, if it's in their community, and using those ideas and principles to help others. It truly is a social field. It relies on just being human, having that communication.
Yeah. On and Off the Couch. Is that on Spotify?
They have an official website, and that's where I listened to it. So.
All right, I'm definitely going to check it out. Well, Ashley, like I said, it's great having you on. You are definitely welcome back anytime. I will fit you in any week that you want, any day of the week that you want to.
Yeah, I'll definitely come back. Yes.
And best of luck to us on our 3-minute thesis presentations.
Yes, and all listeners out there that also have to worry about it.
Because, we need it.
We do. Thank you for having me, John.
Anytime. Again, this is your host, John, of the Research Review, creating a platform to inspire. Peace out.